Today, I am so excited to welcome someone that I deeply admire because she simply has a skill and a talent that I do not. Dianuh Aerin is a watercolor artist and founder of Chasing Linen, a live art design studio that celebrates individuality through hand-painted experiences. Since 2013, she has grown her business from a passion project into a brand that has collaborated with top-name companies. Her deep belief is that every person is unique, and she is on a mission to make others feel seen and celebrated one brushstroke at a time. Dianuh has collaborated with major companies like Starbucks, Michaels, and Vans, and I'm really excited to dive in with her to talk about how she has made connections with these brands and offered experiences for their customers that have grown her business as well. Dianuh, I am so happy to have you on the podcast. I'm fascinated by so much of what you do, primarily because you are literally using your God-given talents to build a business and to create a life for you and your family that feels so aligned. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Me too. I would love for you to talk a little bit about the origination story of your business, because you've been doing this for a hot minute. I saw in your bio that you've been doing this since 2013. So that's like way before all of this was even cool. You've been YouTubing for a hot minute. So can you talk about when you started your business, all of those particular seasons of how you've navigated those pivots, and where you are today, which is a really exciting chapter that I think you're in.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. I love it when someone else kind of tells your story for you and reminds like, this is amazing. And you're like, yeah, it is.
It is, and it's your reality, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super thankful. I mean, all of this, I feel like there's a little bit of luck and timing and a lot of hard work and experimenting, I mean, just to like sum it up. But yeah, when I started in 2013, I think I was 22 and I was at a junior college at the time. Long story with that. And all my friends were graduating their four-year universities, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I mean, I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but I just didn't think that it was realistic. So I mean, it's funny because I have a 5-year-old now, and I was like, when I was his age, I knew I wanted to be an artist. And
No way.
yeah, so that's one of the things that I pray over him all the time, is that he will have a clear vision, direction, because I had that. And right before we started hitting record, we were talking about the intuition, how we always knew, but we don't really listen to her until we get older, But I was like,
Yeah.
okay, always knew. And so when I was 22, I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, because I kept resisting art, right? I kept being like, well, if I don't do art because it's not practical or realistic, then I don't really know what I want to do. So while I'm trying to figure it out, I might as well start a blog and start posting my art, because I keep being called to that, And so at the time, I don't know if you remember Tumblr.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Loved Tumblr days, and I hope it comes back. But I started posting my artwork anonymously. And that was, you didn't have to have a face. You didn't have to share your name. You didn't have to share anything. And Chasing Linen at the time, I came up with that name because, one, it was available.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it's from the story in the Bible with the bleeding woman. She bled for 12 years, and she heard about Jesus who would heal her. She touched his cloak and became healed instantly. And I really resonated with that story for a different reason, not for health, but I really resonated with that story. So I named my blog Chasing Linen anonymously. And at the time, one of my art posts went viral. And this is before I knew what viral was.
Viral before it was cool.
Yeah. And it's funny because I haven't been viral since. Thankful for that viral moment in 2013. But really, that's what kind of started my business. I had the opportunity to go on a mission trip to Alaska. So I was like, let's just see what happens if I sell some artwork, because I have nothing to lose. I have, no money, no job. And that actually funded my trip and another.
No way.
So I was like, whoa, this is my first win ever, truly, if I look back on my life, I'm like, when was my first win? I was not prom queen in high school. I was not, I didn't go to a four-year university until I was after I had already started my business. I was 24 or something like that, 23. I don't remember. So I think I got my big break later in life when I was and this was it. I got to fund my trip. And so I think that gave me a little bit of confidence to be well, let's see what happens here. But I still did a lot of other odd jobs. And then I did that for 2 years as a side hustle while I was going to school full time and I had 3 other jobs. It was a chaotic, before kids and
Oh,
before.
the hustling season of like making probably close to minimum wage, like trying to pay all those bills and figure it out.
Percent. I mean, like it was so funny because in 2015, that's when I decided to go full time. And that first month, when I quit everything and did Chasing Linen full time, I made the same amount or a little bit more than I would at my day jobs. And like it sounds so amazing to say that, but I made so little at the time but I was still proud. I was like, you know what? I made this amount that I would have made in these 3 part-time jobs, and I get to do what I love. And so it was never
Fulfillment is an underrated value.
100%. Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think for me, it was, and it still is never about the money because I didn't think that it was even possible to make money doing art. And it was more like, wow, like, could I actually like pursue this thing and not have it be something that's impractical, that's like in the way of my life, in the way of living my life. It was actually like, wow, this could actually help support my life. And that's when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And basically after 2015, in 2016, so the year after I went full time, is when my business blew up. We hit 6 figures, started to grow a team. I really pivoted a lot, going back to kind of that question of like, what did you do and how did you get to where you're at? At the time, I said yes to everything. I think you should in the beginning, just to see what you like, because I didn't really know what I liked or didn't like. I was just like, I like it all. Let's try it all. So I did that. And so I did cards and prints. I made calendars. I sold it on Etsy. I did that. I did, what is that called? Pop-up shops. So I sold at like farmers markets and did a lot of those events. And then in 2016, I was already doing watercolor portraits for wedding invitations and just like one-off commissions. And then on the side at church, I was doing live painting during worship time. I never thought those two worlds would collide. But someone asked me, hey, can you come and do live watercolor portraits at our event? And I was like, sure. And they're like, oh, also it's, we have a few hundred people. So can you bring in another artist as well? And I was like, sure, I'll bring someone on my team. I didn't have a team, obviously. Didn't even offer this service, right? But it just landed on my lap and I was like, that sounds fun. Let's try it out. And so I asked my friend, a good friend of mine who was also an artist, we prepped together. We had like a little under 2 months to prepare. So like a month and a half, came up with the system, did it together and showed up at this event, right? Didn't know who it was going to be. It's for a huge brand. It's for Janie and Jack, which is that clothing company for kids. And it was a celebrity event. So I don't know if you remember the 90s, like Sister Sister was like
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So Tia Mowry she was there and she was like, oh my gosh, I love what you do. This is so unique. Never seen this before. I'm having my kid's 5th birthday, which now I'm like, wow, it's so crazy. Cause like at the time, obviously I wasn't married, didn't have kids, but now I have a 5-year-old. So now I know what it feels like. But she's like, my boy is turning 5 in 2 weeks. Could you come? And I was like, sure. I mean, she has no idea. This is my first time doing this.
Where were you living? Was this when you were in Nashville? Where were you?
I was in California.
California. Okay.
Yeah. And so all the celebrity events, are in California. The music stuff is here in Nashville. But, and did that. That event ended up being on People magazine. I mean, it was just like, this is what I mean by like, there is luck to it. Like, I am not big enough, or I will never be like, I will always be humble enough to say like, it's like an iceberg situation. I worked for 20 something years to build something and to be like, I don't know where it's going to go. And then people saw the tip of the iceberg, like, holy moly, how did you like, boom, get there? And that's what I believe when I see other people's like success, like overnight or whatever. But yeah, I think that event really snowballed into more opportunities. And now we only do live art. So we do events at corporate events, like kind of like what I told you, we did Coachella, worked with Google. We flew out to a gala for Link, which is like a nonprofit for North Korean refugees. That was like a huge, like, wow, I can't believe I'm being able to do this, like I get to fly out to New York, which is so cool for work, but also to like give back to North Korean refugees. Like I'm from South Korea, but it was still so personal for me. And then also weddings and private events as well. And so it's been really like such a fun journey. This is 2025. So in August, it'll be our 10-year full-time anniversary. 12 years, not full-time, 10 years full-time. So it's been really fun for sure.
I find myself always tearing up during these calls because I can sense in your like it's not just luck, it's also passion, hard work, and divine intervention of like being able to pursue your dreams in a way that, like, again, you have God-given talents. Let me tell you, Diana, you don't want me painting anything stick figure. That's all I got for you. But
Oh,
what an incredible journey of being willing to say yes, to do it all, to like try things and see what sticks. Because what I gleaned from what you just said is that I offered a service that I didn't have in my offer suite. And then it turned into what I think is now the primary way that you go about your business now, which is live events, which are so huge right now. Like I can only imagine the opportunity at your disposal just from seeing what's on social media, like TikTok and weddings and like, and seeing some of your content. And so the way that business and the industry has changed to where you get to do work that you love. Can you talk about how you've built your team throughout the shifts and the pivots and the journey?
yeah, yeah. I think that you kind of like nailed it on the head. Like the problems that we have now is different than the problems that we had before, right?
Well, in the online entrepreneurship world or like business in general, what you were doing in 2016 and what's happening now in 2025 is probably way different.
Great thing was that we were like the best kept secret. Like nobody knew what live art even was. So when I would try to explain it to people, they're like, I don't get it. Because the whole like elevator pitch, like describe your business in one sentence. I'm like, I could never because people
No.
can't even visualize like what I'm talking about. Like now people come up to me and be like, oh, I saw this on TikTok. I'm so glad I'm seeing it in real life. I'm like, there was no TikTok back then. There was hardly like Instagram was super new.
You were the trend.
And it's like, it's like one of those things where it's kind of hard because even today, like the other week I was in California and someone was like, "Oh my gosh, I see that your style that, you created, I see it in more places now. Like people are like imitating you. How do you feel about that?" And I was like, "Well, first of all, that's really nice to hear because I kind of thought the same thing. Like back then, I couldn't even explain it because I kind of like made it up on the spot. Not saying that there's nothing new under the sun. Obviously, there were ideas that I kind of put together. There was live art, there was watercolor portraits. I just kind of brought it together. But yeah, it's just a different problem. So back then, I think the problem was that people didn't understand it, but once they understood it, they were sold. It was like I didn't even have to sell, and that was great. But I think what was hard was that I was doing all these other things. I was doing wedding invitations, I was doing commissions, I was doing courses, I was doing in-person workshops, I was doing pop-up shops, selling my prints and cards. And 10 years of entrepreneurship, it's like learning how to edit things, because especially if you're someone who has a million ideas, which is like, I think you and I, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we are.
It's not about getting more ideas, it's about editing and knowing like, okay, one out of 100 ideas might be okay. Not even like great. It's like, it might be okay. But
Yeah.
it's learning how to like take away the 99 that are like not going to work out.
Yeah. And the ones that you really would love to pursue, but being able to refine down and stick to that one thing, even though it's like tugging at your heart to do those other things because you just love it. I resonate with that so much.
I know. It's like, I think the best and the worst thing about being a creative entrepreneur is seeing potential in things. You're
Yeah.
like, there's potential.
What if?
But do you need to pursue that potential? Do you have to do it now? You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
for sure.
I'm sure we'll skip to the having the kids thing eventually. That's when you're like, okay, I can't pursue every potential. So anyways, at the time it was like, okay, now I need to choose. Do I want to juggle it all? Because I do love all of it. Like I didn't close anything down that I hated. I loved it all. And I still
Yeah.
like, maybe.
What if?
Yeah, exactly. But at the time, it was so clear this is what needs your attention. And so we had to like really quickly, as I'm booking these events, I'm like, okay, I can't do it all. And I did it all before. I was a solopreneur for quite some time and once I started hiring, I was like, actually, I love being with people. I love leadership and leading people. I love mentoring people. And I just was like, this is my sweet spot. And so we started to grow. And now we're like a boutique agency of live artists. I think we are like one of the only group, like collective of artists that has the same style. So I feel like I had to kind of change roles a little bit and
Hmm.
to that. But it's been so fun to play those different roles in my
Well, and
business.
exciting to see the growth, I'm sure. Can you talk about the size of your team and if they're like geographically dispersed? Are they in the same area? How are you managing that team?
Yeah, so in 2020, I moved from Southern California, where my entire team is based, still are based, to Nashville. It's not close.
No, nope, it's not.
And so I had to learn really over the last few years how to manage my team from out of state, but basically right now, I mean, it really depends, but we have only independent contractors right now. We did have employees before, but we changed our business model. And I think there's about a little under 10 of us total. And then we have like one-off people that we just pull, depending on if there's a need for it. And
Yeah.
it's like we're gonna be coming up on wedding season, so we're gonna need to hire. So it kind of always ranges, but I think the biggest number we were at was like a dozen. So we try to keep it small because I want to know everyone's names. I want to know what they're like, what they're up to. And I think the bigger it gets, I just don't have capacity for that. I've really enjoyed our team. We have a manager in California who's local to everyone else. And I think she's a huge pivotal role in the business structure and how it
Hmm.
functions. Without her, I couldn't live here and to have the lifestyle that I have today, So, yeah. And then we have a social media person who just kind of helps edit. We have artists, obviously, and some assistants here and there. And then I do have another artist here in Tennessee as well. And then a few contacts that I kind of pull depending on if there's a need here.
Yeah. So are you guys mostly doing the live art, or are you also doing like custom pieces, commission pieces? Are you also doing that component as well?
Yeah, so it really depends on the season. I kind of keep things open-ended because again, I wish I didn't like things, but I like things. And so I don't want to ever like close it. But in the last 5 years, we've like open and close, depending on the season. And I actually really enjoy that. I realize that I'm like a project-based person. So there are seasons where it's open. Like right now, I just did a portrait for a client whose wedding I painted back in 2018, and now they have a kid. And so for Mother's Day, I painted a new portrait with their baby, and that was really fun. And then I'm doing a few more, but it's going to close very soon because we're going into wedding season. And then, we're going to open the holiday shop at the end of the year. So it's very project based. And I'm just realizing like that's just how I flow. That's just the way I operate. I like to go all in and then rest and then go all in and rest,
Yeah.
I'm not like a consistent person. I have a cycle.
I need to determine my cycle as well because I relate to that, and I'm in that season of refinement of being like, all right, what do I need to say no to? How do I like make this simpler? Because my business right now is not incredibly simple, but being able to discern where should I spend most of my time and how can I empower my team to thrive alongside me or without me, or just utilizing the strengths that everyone has in this season of growth. So Dianuh, can you talk about how you're spending your time right now? Are you, and as kind of the face of your brand, do people often come and say, I want Dianuh, like I have to have Dianuh here, and how you're managing that in the season of also trying to discern where you should spend your time best?
Yeah. So I really started to split the brands in 2020. I was even doing it before 2020, but I officially did it in 2020, like publicly. So yeah, I kind of got to a point where so before, let me just rewind a little bit. Before me, right? And so I was chasing linen. I was the face, I was the artist, I was the person responding to the emails. I mean, I think that's the way it should be in the beginning. Like, that's just my opinion. I know people are like, simplify right away. And I'm like, no, be
You got to
complicated.
be in the messy middle. You've got to be in the thick of it to really understand where your time and your value
Exactly.
lies.
Yeah. Like you need to know how your business runs because only you will know that. You can't
Hmm.
have someone else who doesn't know your business advice and take it and then be like, actually, so I think, in the beginning I was everything. And then I started having artists, but I was always still there. They were just my second artist or my third artist. And then eventually we would book more than one event at a time. And I'm like, oh, I can't be at multiple places at once. So now we would send team one, team two, and then it'd be like 3 events, so it just kept going. And then we started doing travel events. So I was the one traveling, and then I had artists in-house in California. And so I just kind of came to a point where I was like, you know what? I am no longer the face of Chasing Linen. And actually, our signature style are faceless portraits. And it made sense for me, like, we should be a faceless brand. We should really lean in with the watercolor portrait aspect of it. This is the service. It doesn't really matter who delivers it because I train all my artists individually to have the same style. So that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like we're like one of the only brands out there that have a signature style that we all do. And so I really like that. I think I've kind of had to wrestle through, do I want to have individual styles? Do I want to have, but I was like, no, I don't want to be the star of the show. I think it's the service that's the star of the show. And a lot of businesses operate that way. And I think it really it depends on what kind of business you end up having, but it worked for us. And so we do not have anyone ask for me anymore, which is awesome. I love that. And so going back to like what I do, I guess I would say that I am like the big picture person. So I kind of figure out, when are the projects going? When are we working on what? When is push season? When is rest season? When are we opening commissions? When are we pushing products? And then outside of that, I am primarily in charge of marketing and sales. And then the little details is like my manager. She does like the admin work, customer service. She schedules things and gets, dots the I's and crosses the T's. Praise the Lord.
Yeah. We need people like her.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. That's like, I would say, if that's like the only advice I can give on this episode, is like, find the person that kind of, what was it? It was like, you're only as good as your weakest link. I think that was
Yep.
a, and if that's your weak link, then hire someone who is great at that.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a book about like who, not how. And it's about finding that person who is the who, not how you do it.
Yes. I think it's by Dan Martell or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Good.
My little bookshelf back here with all of the books that I try to read.
I hear you.
And I think what's so fascinating about your business, your brand, is that you are a commodity and an agency and a business that is sought after by some of these really big corporate players. You've worked with Starbucks, Michaels, Vans. I know you were so excited to work with Vans. I really loved hearing your story about how like Vans has been a brand that you've kind of been obsessed with. So can you talk about the caliber of brands you've worked with, what you love, and maybe how people, fellow creators, or entrepreneurs can position themselves to pursue big collaborations like that?
100%. So I think this is a little bit old school way to do it, but I still stand by my old school ways. Obviously, we've pivoted a lot and changed, but I think what has changed with our culture today is that we focus on like the pitching part. Like, can I get the sale? Like, can I get the sale? So they'll pitch themselves to X, Y, and Z. And then they show up and it's like, the work is not there. The quality is not there. The systems are not there. And I'm like, it should be literally the opposite. Like, what I mean by that is, when I started art, and even to this day, it's not about the money first. It's about like, what is your why? Like, for us, it's making people feel seen, known, and celebrated through our artwork. And how do we do that? Through the quality of our work.
Yeah.
And quality of the work should really speak for itself. If it's a visual thing, I mean, for example, like, let's talk about like skincare, or, there's all these like influencer marketing, right? Or clothes. If you're doing a bunch of influencer marketing and people are like hearing about it, but then the clothes are falling apart, or there's like bugs in your whatever, I don't know. If the quality is not there,
Yeah.
what is the point of
Yeah.
selling it? You know what I mean? Whereas like, if it was like, let's say like, oh my gosh, you can't even stop talking about it naturally because this shampoo has changed your hair, and you're like telling all your aunties and best friends and mamas, and you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what I would work on first, is your portfolio up to par? Is your quality there? So that when an opportunity comes, you're like, I'm ready to go. That's what I
Yeah.
mean by the iceberg. Like, build the bottom of the iceberg first before you try to get to the top. Because if you hit the top and you have nothing on the bottom, you will just, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to
Mm-hmm.
hold you up.
You got
And
to walk the talk before you go to those heavy hitters.
100%. And I'm just going to be really honest with you. Like, I have yet to approach a brand. Like, it was always them coming to me or word of mouth. And I don't know, this sounds like braggy, but it's true. Like, the first like brand that approached us was Janie and Jack. I didn't even know, because there was an in-between person that they made us sign an NDA. So they're like, when you show up, I'm sorry, we didn't sign an NDA for that one. We signed NDAs for other ones, because now I
Yeah.
talk about it. We worked with Janie and Jack, was it last year or 2 years ago? And I was just like, this is like a full circle moment.
Yeah.
So cool. But anyways, like, in the beginning, like, we didn't even know who it was going to be. And then it was Janie and Jack. And I also find that that is one of the things with big brands. Like, I always get asked, like, how do you work with big brands? I'm like, it's never the big brands that approach me, by the way. Like, it's not Google being like, hey, it's Google. Do you want to like work with us? There's an in-between person, because these big brands work with PR agencies, they work with event producers, and it's their contacts, right? It's like the event producer's contacts, and the event producer always contacts us. And so I did want to, like, I don't know, share that secret, if that's even a secret, share
I think that's really important. And I like you've actually touched on a point that I think clarifies for people what I do. And it's like I'm the middleman between your story and the media. And it's not, and I think it's so fascinating, Diana, that like you have not pitched these individuals or these big organizations, but what stands the test of time is your reputation, your high quality, your commitment to service, and having really strong relationships and a personal brand that commands that type of trust within an organization. That way, when the influencer manager or the experiential marketing person from that agency or from that middleman, they have seen your work and they're therefore going to carry forth an opportunity to one of their clients or bigger businesses that connects you to an incredible opportunity that candidly you didn't seek out, but people just understand what you're known for. And I think that's so beautiful. And also, again, that speaks to the iceberg that you're talking about here of I've worked really, really hard and done really great work. And what you're seeing is just a small part of the work that I've done. And there's so much that built up to where you are and where you are now. And I think that essentially is what entrepreneurship requires. There are no overnight successes. There is no get rich quick scheme unless you're doing some shady stuff. Like the proof is in the hard work and the focus on the long-term sustainable growth, commitment to excellence that is really, really hard. Like a lot of people want to get into a job or a business or this, like this big shiny object. But when they're faced with the opportunity or the requirement to like do the work, then it's not so exciting or fun. So you have done the work over the past decade or more and have really reaped the benefits of that. So I think that's just something to celebrate.
Yeah, yeah, it's old school, but I think there's something said about the classics. Like why are the classics still around? There's micro pivots along the way, 100%, but it's because like they have the work, they've done the work, and once you build a
Mhm.
solid foundation, you can grow whatever you want on there.
I think what's really beautiful about the little bit that I know about your story is that you've worked so hard over a period of time and now you're kind of reaping the benefits of that hard work. And one of those things is being able to have a house just down the road in Florida that I assume is probably an investment property, but you guys get to travel down and spend your time in 30A as a family with your young kiddo and really soak up life and make some memories. Do you want to talk about that at all and just kind of enjoying the fruits of your labor?
So for us, we always wanted a second property as like a short-term rental thing. I mean, I guess we were always curious about it. We weren't like, it wasn't like necessarily a goal until we moved here from California. Luckily, I guess, quote, quote, California is just so incredibly high. And so our house in California was built in 1950s. It was like a 1500s, a little over that square foot house. Amazing. We love that house still. And we did everything ourselves. And when I say we, I mean my husband and my father-in-law renovated the whole thing. But when we bought this house, built in 2020, when we moved, so it was like, only a few months old, more than double the square footage. We made money moving here. You know what I mean? And so I think that was a huge part of it. Like, I'm not going to be like, I am the boss and my bit, that's what I'm talking about. Like, just smart moves and a little bit of luck and the right timing. Be humble. Like, I will always be humble enough to say that it's never just on my own strength.
Mhm.
Right timing, the right strategy. And my husband's business at the time also did really well with everything that was going on. Very stressful, just because your business does well on paper does not mean it's not going to take toll on your personal life or health, but
It's not always glamorous, not always glamorous.
exactly. But I do think that house that we have now, it's a symbol of that. It's a symbol of like, gosh, the hard work and the sacrifice that we made to move out of California, where we were pretty much like born and raised there, and made the sacrifice because we were like looking long term into our family. Like, is this the best way to spend our money? Is this the best way to invest? I think it's just a lot of little things that kind of allowed us to have that. And I don't say that lightly. Like, I know that we're so fortunate. And it's not always easy. Like Florida, as you know, even more than I do, like there's a lot of weather and there's a lot of potential for there's a lot of upkeep for sure. So I'm not saying
Mhm.
it's super easy, but it's at least right now super worth it for us. And we enjoy it, as a family ourselves, and then we rent it out short term. when we're not there. So we've really enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you share the big picture behind that because it matters. And I think transparency is a value that I have and I think we probably share in terms of just, not making everything look as or appear as easy as it looks. Like there is a lot that goes into it. And again, the hard work, the right timing, the right strategy, being patient, small incremental wins that compound allows you to prioritize or like choose how you spend
Right.
the benefits of those wins. I
Uh-huh.
didn't realize that you and your husband were both entrepreneurs. So that leads me to ask, like, how do you guys balance life now that you're both entrepreneurs and you probably have a little bit of a non-traditional work schedule and now you have a 5-year-old. So can you talk about how you guys are balancing that and juggling everything while leading thriving businesses?
Yeah. So, kind of like a little backup. When I started my business, I was living at my parents' house. I was a college student. I was single. So I had like very little to lose, at that point. And then my husband and I got married. He was working under a company at the time. And then he gave me a lot of insight and helped me grow my business. That's when I went full time. And then eventually he kind of grew enough contacts and his line of business is very like relational. I mean, I think a lot of and I even want to say most businesses are relational. And so he was able to start his own business. And this was right before we got pregnant and things like that. And then so when we got pregnant, and even before and I started my business, I knew like eventually I would love to be a mom, God willing. And I want to have a business that allows me to do that. And so when we had a kid, I kind of stepped back a little bit from my business. And I still think that I'm not as like hustling. Who knows if it's an age thing or a kid thing? Probably both.
Yeah.
And also just like a seasonal thing. Like I'm very open if and when that time comes to go back into that, like, I'm willing to listen to that. But right now I'm not in that phase. So I would say we're both like co-parenting and co-working, but I am the more primary caretaker of our son. But drop off and pickups, like we do one of each every day. And so we definitely have shared responsibilities. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like it's a built-in thing because we've been doing it for so long, but we definitely had to like learn how to create that groove in the beginning when we had our son.
Yeah, yeah. Having children really makes you refocus, reprioritize, and like kind of navigate things as a couple, as a family completely differently, especially when you have businesses to run. Diana, I love how transparent you've been and also how inspirational your story is because I think it really articulates that you can pursue your passions. You should be willing to put in the hard work because all of that compounds even during the seasons where the clarity may not be there or the tough decisions are ever present. So I'm curious if you could give advice to someone who's listening to this podcast who really wants to be in your shoes one day, what would you say?
Yeah, so I just came up with this phrase recently, but it's the same advice that I've been giving, which is don't be guac, be a pickle instead. I love both, by the way. I love both guac and pickles. But, I would say for the most part, everybody loves guacamole. I mean, like even babies or kids that like don't like, they're picky. I feel like for the most part, people love guac. Guac is a crowd pleaser. That's why they have it in the appetizers at most restaurants.
Yeah.
Pickles always have like a strong reaction. They'll either say, I love pickles. Oh my gosh, I love dill pickles. I love blah, blah, blah. Or they'll be like, that's disgusting. I
Yeah.
hate it.
Hate pickles. I love pickles.
It has a strong reaction for people.
Yeah.
So that's
Memorable.
yeah, exactly. It's memorable. And I think in the beginning, I think it's okay to be guac, to please everybody, to kind of try different things. I mean, I would only try things that you are excited about. So if you're not excited about it, don't build a business that you're going to end up resenting. Like, what is the point? Because, we're talking about overnight success earlier and that there is no such thing as overnight success unless it's a get rich quick scheme that's shady. But I would even argue that those businesses that are shady still have to put in the hard work. So you
Yeah.
can't avoid hard work. Period, I want to say. Maybe you might have some loopholes because you have some family connections or more money or whatever. But at the end, you're going to have to put in the hard work anyway to build something. So you might as well build it on something that you enjoy, right? And that's where the pickle part comes in, is you don't want to build a business that pleases everybody that you end up resenting or being bitter about. Instead, build a business for people that just get what you do. Like in the very beginning, our service was we're doing watercolor portraits and it's faceless because for me, I have a fashion illustration background and I really love capturing the essence of that person. And I think it shows beyond their face, because a lot of people have personal attachments and responses to their own face. Like you might not like this about yourself, or you might be like, oh, your face tells a story. You know what I mean? And I think it's so personal. But for me, I don't know, like for everybody that I paint, I don't know your personal story. Like I can't sit here and be like, Lyndsey, your face tells a story because this is all the reasons why. It's like, no, it's like I have this like quick impression of you and this vibe, like you give off X, Y, and Z energy, and I think to be a faceless portrait kind of symbolizes that. And it shows you a quick, because like I don't know you personally, but I get these impressions of you and I want you to like see that. Then a lot of people will be like, oh, I love that. Kind of like what you did for me in the beginning. Like, I love how you summarize my story for me, but I'm in my story. So it's hard for me to see that sometimes. But if someone else relays that story, you're like, oh, wow, like I feel really seen and celebrated in that moment. And that's what we're trying to capture through our watercolor portraits that are faceless. But we definitely had people not understand that. They're like, why is this faceless? It's creepy. I'm not even kidding, Lyndsey. One time at like one of our earlier events, someone came up to us. This is at a kid's birthday party, a 1-year-old's birthday party. A woman comes up to us, wants their portrait done. We paint their portrait. She's like, oh, where's my face? And we're like, oh, these are faceless portraits. This is our signature style. We kind of explained like what I just explained to you. And she's like, okay, do you have a pencil? And we're like, sure, there's a pencil. We didn't know what was going on. She draws a smiley face on the portrait and she goes, much better. And she just walks away. And I was like, you know what? I'm not guac. I'm glad you don't get it because I don't want to serve people like you anyway. But all this to share that it doesn't matter how, like, we have, I can like list off all the brands that we worked with, Vans, Givenchy, Chanel, whatever. But it's like, if there are always going to be people who don't get it, and that's not only okay, that's fantastic. Be a pickle. Don't be guacamole.
Oh, I love it so much, but I really cannot imagine someone coming up to your art, which is a deeply personal thing that you create and also experience, and someone like fixing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm like, it's okay. Cause I'm not trying to sell to her. I'm not trying to appeal to her. I feel like that's like my big business takeaway. And ever since I started leaning more into my individual strengths and my style and my vibes, I'm like, I love my business because I attract the people who get my vibes and like my style are the people that stick around and hire me anyway.
It's very poetic because it requires such a really difficult point of inflection to experience because you do have to decide, you do have to choose, and you do have to go all in on that direction and do so with a level of confidence and certainty that you have to stick to. And so I think you have really nailed and been so successful with sticking to that thing that brings you joy, that people love seeing, that you can train other people to create as well. And you're reaping the benefits of having big brands and agencies and partners come to you with opportunities that allow you to do what you love and something that is also a profitable business. So Dianuh, can you talk about where people can find you outside of this podcast, whether it's on social media, your website, and where you might be doing future live art?
So our business is called Chasing Linen, and we have our Instagram at Chasing Linen or website at chasinglinen.com. We're also on YouTube and Pinterest, but the Pinterest and YouTube are under more of like my personal account, which is Dianuh Aerin, and it's spelled Dianuhaerin. Pronounced normal, spelled funky. And that's where you'll kind of see more of like behind the scenes, my everyday life, what it's like to be a business owner that runs the service kind of a thing.
And I'm so glad that we can. I'm so glad that we met in a mastermind. I really look forward to the day where we're going to grab coffee or a beach day and hang out down the road in Florida. But so really glad that we got to dive into your story, both in business, the seasons and the pivots that you've made, and also how you're navigating that as a mom who wants to be ever present for her kids and, build a life that feels very aligned and empowering and really captures the essence of joy that we want to create for ourselves and for our family. So Dianuh, thank you again for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.